8-year-old James Linegar of Louisiana began talking about aviation at 2 years old. His parents reportedly knew nothing about the subject and were amazed when their little boy started displaying such an extensive knowledge of planes. Their amazement turned to alarm when James started having nightmares about being shot down by a plane with a red sun on it. He talked about having dreams and memories of being Lieutenant James McCurdy Houston, a World War II fighter pilot from Pennsylvania who had been killed in Iwo Jima more than 50 years before. Andrea, his mother, said that James would scream at the top of his voice, "Airplane crash, on fire, can't get out, help," as he kicked and pointed to the ceiling. Later, James told his parents that he had flown a plane called the Corsair from a boat called the Natoma. When James' father decided to do some research, he discovered that there had been a small escort carrier named the Natoma Bay, which had been in the Battle of Iwo Jima, and that there really had been a pilot named James Houston. His plane was hit in the engine by Japanese fire on March 3rd, 1945. According to Jim Tucker, a psychologist at the University of Virginia, Houston's plane crashed exactly the way that James Linegar had described. This report would seem to support the idea of another life experience for this boy, a reincarnation or a re-embodiment of the essential self into a new life. The individualized soul remembered the prior encasement of this other experience. What are we to make of such a report? You may have in you a dismissal of reincarnation or re-embodiment, or you may be on the fence with it as a fact, or you may embrace it as part of your knowing or felt knowing of the curriculum of your life. And in our skepticism, we may simply doubt of its truth. But I would invite us today to remain open, to suspend our disbelief in the name of gaining more understanding of what this purpose of this life is all about. Sometimes a little bit of humor is indicated for considering something that we may be on the fence about. I came across one person who said, "I don't believe in reincarnation," which is strange because in a previous life I did. It's interesting, I came across some folks that you might be surprised that embrace this concept of reincarnation. Leo Tolstoy said, "As we live through thousands of dreams in our present life, so is our present life only one of many thousands of such lives which we enter from the other, more real life, and then return after death. Our life is but one of the dreams of that more real life. And so it is endlessly until the very last one, the very real life of God." Henry Ford, who developed the Ford Motor Company, says, "I adopted the theory of reincarnation when I was just 26. Experience, or genius is experience, some think. that it is a gift or a great talent, but it is the fruit of long experience in many lives. And Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of the Unity movement, acknowledged reincarnation as a fact. He said from the 12 Powers of Man, a book that he wrote, a new soul is not created with every physical birth. A physical birth simply means that a soul is taking on another body. Every person inhabiting this earth has gone through this process of dying and being reincarnated many times. So what are we supposed to do with this input? What are we supposed to do with it? I recognize that in my conversations with people over the years that, it sometimes pushes people's buttons. That in Scripture it says we are given to live only one life. And yet, just be with it. Breathe. Allow yourself to entertain the possibility. I'm not trying to convince you one way or another, but it does explain certain things, certain patterns, certain reasons for people having certain experiences. In Unity as a teaching, this teaching is not just a mind science of how to make more stuff in your life, more good. Eric Butterworth said, it's not just about what he called affluenza, of getting all the stuff that you want. Unity is a teaching that is about cultivating a felt knowing of what it is and who we actually are as spiritual beings. We are not just here for the goodies. We are here to expand our own being of what we are. Last Wednesday night, there was a Hindu Swami that was here from the Chinmaya mission, and they were here all week. And this one teacher, he mentioned reincarnation, but he also talked about basically a code of conduct that was mirrored in the fact of basically in Christianity that would be called the golden rule of living in a way that is in alignment with a good moral life. But as I sat in the back and watched him, I had a shift in consciousness. And I recognized that he was an outer representation of an inner process going on within each one of us. That he was, in a sense, the inner guru, the inner self, expanding its light to the personality. And that may sound strange to you, but it was like he was a necessary outpicturing of something that's happening within each one of us, and that the premise of reincarnation was about this give and take of learning life after life, bit by bit, inch by inch, of this inner self informing our consciousness about who it is and what it is that we are. And a week ago Saturday, when I was here with 200 Sikh children, actually from 10 to 22 years of age, in this very room, I said to them, "You all believe in reincarnation, don't you?" And they said, "Yes, we do." And I said, that's we're on the same page. But what's the purpose of reincarnation? What is the purpose behind it? And I introduced something that they hadn't really thought of before, which was the purpose of regeneration. That the premise of reincarnation was really secondary to the intention of re-embodiment for a singular reason and purpose. And that purpose is regeneration. And that outpicturing of Jesus the Christ was the figurehead or the prototype or the type man, as Charles Fillmore called Jesus. The type man of the divine idea of what you and I are growing into as a fully embodied, fully conscious, fully aware example that Jesus the Christ is a way shower, or was the way shower of what it is that you and I will become. That we are that already in potential, but that we are becoming that. And I can't tell you how many times during the day, I don't know about you, but during the day, I go in and out of remembering that truth. I get caught up in the personality self and the patterns of fear and the patterns of limitation and the patterns of, well, what if, and so on. And then I go back into divine remembrance. And that is one of the key elements, the key opportunities of coming back into a physical life, to remember who it is that we are, and then we rise up in our strength, and we rise up into our selfhood with a capital S, and we live from that place, and that is the whole purpose. Some would say, well, the purpose of having a human life is simply to experience, to gain experiences. And that would seem to be the case also. But I'm an advocate, because of my life experience and because of all the study and everything I've been exposed to in this life, that there is a divine pattern that is seeking to be born in each one of us, that the reason for being in the body is really the glory of God. And that in Unity teachings, it really comes down to that the purpose of living a life is actually two things. And it seems somewhat simplistic, because each one of us here have such huge diversity within our own expression of this lifetime. But the actual ground of being purpose of a life is to express the good and the love that is the actual truth behind all of the sub-reasons for being here. To accept the good that God would have and does have for each one of us, and to allow the love to spring forth and to be manifested and to be shared within every situation of our lives. And each one of us forget all the time, because of our fears and because of the false evidence of who we think we are. And so we are given these multiple opportunities to re-experience what we thought we were, and to come into a place of remembering the self, remembering who it is that we actually are. To really go from unconscious reactivity to aware responsivity. I don't know about you, but a lot of the time, just kind of muddling through life is really an unconscious act of reactivity. We react to this, we react to that. But the path that in Unity we call it the Christ path, the path of Christ consciousness, is to claim our own actual divinity of being and growing into being a Christed being. And there's so much that we hold around this whole thing, that Jesus was somehow the exclusive example of that. But he came as a way shower. And that through the way we are saved. It's not a vicarious atonement that we are saved through him, but we are saved through our own indwelling divinity. In a sense, we are almost like a diamond in the rough, that over lifetime and lifetime, we become more and more refined and able to reflect more light. Eric Butterworth, who was a great Unity minister, he wrote books like Discover the Power Within You, The Universe's Calling, and Spiritual Economics, said of reincarnation, "At the heart of this concept of rebirth is the ideal that there is that of you that is more than your body. And the you that transcends the body, the eternal, ever-living soul of you, has woven the body temple and is the sustaining influence of it. But if the body becomes unfit for further service and is laid aside in the process that we shall call death, this is in no way the end of you. The you that is more than your body moves on to be clothed anew according to God's purpose." So what is the purpose of human life? Again, I come back to that it's for good. That in each life, in each day, in each moment, there is this opportunity to identify with our actual nature or to be caught up in the identity of separation and fear. Recognizing the good in life sometimes can feel concealed. And there was a beautiful little story. I don't know if you've heard this, but I love this story. It's a beautiful girl in the village was pregnant. Her angry parents demanded to know who the father was. At first, resistant to confess, the anxious and embarrassed girl finally pointed to Hakim, a Zen master whom everyone previously revered for living such a pure life. When the outraged parents confronted Hakim with their daughter's accusation, he simply replied, "Is that so?" When the child was born, the parents brought it to Hakim, who now was viewed as a pariah by the whole village, and they demanded that he take care of the child since it was his responsibility. All he said was, "Is that so?" And for many months he took very good care of the child until the daughter could no longer withstand the lie she had told. And she confessed that the real father was a young man in the village whom she had tried to protect. The parents immediately went to Hakim to see if he would return the baby. With profuse apologies, they explained what had happened. All Hakim said, "Is that so?" as he handed back the child. So it would seem that a great deal of the spiritual path is really working with the emotions and our reactivity, and to not be so reactive. And it reminds me of the story with Jesus when he is in a local town, and there are people that are ready to stone a young woman for being caught in the act of adultery. And they're just in this big drama. It's all emotional, and he's drawing something in the sand. And he simply says, "Those among you who are without sin, cast the first stone." This is the place of living from the center of the core of being that is not reactive. And I would assert that this is the development of ourselves. That you and I are so centered within our own core that when there is this outer drama that's going on, that we just are in this place where we say either, "Is that so?" or we're coming from a place of just non-reactivity and calling forth the higher purpose of divine remembrance. I remember years ago I was sitting in meditation and I had this image that came to me. It was of a man he was driving a chariot, and it was a very strange coloring within this vision that I had. It was all red. And this man was really trying to control 5 horses of the chariot. And my inner self said, this is what life is in a way, is learning how to control the 5 senses. That these horses are the senses that we have, each of us, to learn how to work with, and that this is one of the purposes of human life. To live in a way that we are managing the energy of our own emotional and mental and physical lives. Some would say, well, do you have to be in such control? Well, no. I mean, like I said, part of the reason for a human life is to experience. But when we get on a certain place on the path of unfoldment, when we step really into the vibration of the Christ path, it is about managing the energy. It is about being responsive versus reactive. It is the path of mastery. It is the path of being an adept. So when I'm sharing this with you right now, I'm speaking to and with your soul, because I assert, and through my own consciousness, this is about developing our own being to become a full expression of our own Christ nature, to step into Christ consciousness. And that's why the Unity teachings and educational movement was born, because the founders were really caught up in the images and the experience of illness and trial and lack of prosperity and lack. And they got a hold of an idea, a core idea that said, You can be more than this. You are more than this. Claim it. Allow it to be in your life. And that's really the message. It's not just demonstration of prosperity. It's about compassion. Compassion for ourselves along on this journey. I hope this is making sense. I was talking with a good friend that was visiting with us last week, and he is a student of the work of George Gurdjieff. And Gurdjieff said that there are basically four levels of human consciousness that we can experience in a physical body, in a physical life. And I lined it up with this whole idea of reincarnation, that we can come into a physical life with eyes closed, in bed, sleeping and dreaming. And the Course in Miracles says basically that earth life is basically a state of being asleep and dreaming. And the second phase is then one of eyes open, still asleep, but operating from a place of stimulus response or action reaction. The third one is a state of self-awareness, basically that says, when we have a life experience, it says, is that so? We become aware, self-aware of being a soul in a body, and that we're working with a tremendous array of energies. Have you found that in your own life as you you're waking up more and more as a spiritual being, that you're really fielding a lot of different things? Awakening is a double-edged sword. It's not just all love and light. There's lots of shadows in there that as we are waking up, we choose. What am I going to give my attention to? This morning when I was walking at first light, maybe 6 a.m., I was dealing with all types of stuff going on in consciousness. And I said to myself, well, Bruce, what are you going to choose? How are you going to show up? Are you going to live from your heart, or are you going to come from fear? This is the choice that we have. The fourth state is where we're connecting the dots. We're really getting it around this purpose of this life, and we're really connecting things up to come into a place of conscious felt knowing. So we're again speaking of levels of consciousness, of the reasons why we are in a human body. This is spiritual education, and I'm not really sure sometimes whether or not this is too heavy. But you know what? You're worth it. You really are. You're really worth having these ideas to chew on in terms of what is the purpose of your life? What is the purpose of our life? What are we becoming? Who am I in this life experience? And if it all just seems a bit much, I would say, quite frankly, an application that we can take from this place today is to just practice golden rule living. That through the golden rule of doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, you will progress in a quickened way, because this is a divine formula. given to us by the illumined one that is the core of this teaching. Jesus the Christ said, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you," and that we are quickened through this process of human life, and we don't get stuck in all of these perceptual, made-up stories. We become what we're seeking. And we already are what we're seeking. It's just simply realizing it, claiming it, loving ourselves, loving our brothers and sisters, because what we do to ourselves and to another, we do to ourselves. That's golden rule thinking. And that is the way. That is the way we wake up. So, Jennifer and I are just on the eve of driving 3,000 miles round trip to Arizona. And I just wanted to let you know, we're starting this afternoon. And as we leave here today, I just want you to know that I love you, and I love life. I love my wife. And that to take what it is that has been offered and to allow yourself to live it, to really live it. Allow yourself to move beyond the belief and the concepts, to claim this core truth that no matter how many lives we have lived or are going to live, the bottom line is God is good, God is love, and we are that. We are that. Thank you.